We'd fought all through the night, and we'd taken cover in a very secure position, which had been obviously an Argentinian command position. But during the morning, whilst we were in there, we needed to come out in order to look at the platoon, and Corporal McLaughlin and Sergeant Ross had said that we need to go and check the blokes, make sure they've got their ammunition and those sorts of things. And just as Corporal McLaughlin exited this bunker cave-type structure, and I was immediately behind him myself, a rocket or an Argentinian shell exploded right at the side of us. So that was when Corporal McLaughlin then sustained a serious back injury, but that wasn't life-threatening. He would have survived that, although he was in a great deal of pain, and it was a serious injury. Subsequent to that injury, he was then helped down the mountain by another paratrooper. And during the journey down there, they were then hit again by a direct hit from an artillery shell. And Corporal McLaughlin, sadly, and Lance Corporal Higgs were killed immediately outright. What
impact did his decision-making, his actions on the battlefield actually have?
They were absolutely instrumental in the Battle of Mount Longdon, because it was a chaotic battle from the outset. The Argentinians were in very strong positions, both in terms of their positions on the ground. They held all the high ground. Their firepower was overwhelming in terms of the superiority of it, and they held the key to the battle, really. We were in very serious trouble for most of the early part of the battle for Mount Longdon. During that early part, the battle was very fragmented, and leadership was very difficult to sustain. Junior leadership, officer level, was either lost amongst the confusion, or they'd become wounded. Sergeant Mackay of 4 Platoon was killed. Sergeant Ross was elsewhere on the mountain, so it was a very confused and fragmented battle taking place on the left side of Mount Longdon. And Corporal McLaughlin was the person that coordinated all the attacks, made sure everybody kept moving, which is absolutely instrumental in those situations. And it is fair to say that without Corporal McLaughlin there, defeat would have been possible in the early hours, and I absolutely believe that he avoided that for 3 Para and enabled us to get into a position where later on in the battle the rest of the battalion could join in and eventually succeed.
So Mark, Stewart, your brother, a man who has been talked about with enormous respect by those who fought alongside him, a man who many say really did deserve a medal posthumously for what he did. There was a citation, but it was lost, and
that's
the medal
right.
has never been forthcoming.
Well, it's very simple. We've carried out the investigations, and we know exactly what happened in a grubby house a few days after the battle, lit by a paraffin lamp. Citations were being written longhand by the commanding officer, Sir Hugh Pike, at the time. They were then passed to the next room to the guy who typed up the citations. Those citations, at one point, roughly 30 had been typed up at that point. An order came down, said they've all been typed on the wrong paper. They need to be retyped. With that, it is clear that Stewart's citation was lost.
And the impact of that has been that the medal that many say should have been awarded was not awarded. Why are you still fighting for it to be awarded? Why is this so important to the family?
Well, it's important for a couple of reasons, really. It's an injustice. It's pure and simply, it's an injustice. From my personal point of view, I promised our mum that shortly before she died, that I would continue, or we would continue the campaign. So it's the fulfilling of a promise, fulfilling of a sense of duty. You know, the government haven't deemed it correct to award Stewart this, but their argument is non-existent.
What they say is that 6 operational gallantry awards were awarded to 3 Para, with more than double that number of citations actually submitted. The citations were written at the time of the operation, and there were clear opportunities to ensure any omissions were addressed by the commanding officer. They say any changes now would undermine the integrity of the awards and devalue those held by others.
Well, the government has got no evidence to support that. Retrospective gallantry awards have been awarded some 50 years after any action. The precedent's already set on that. The government's argument it's hollow, it's non-existent. They promised a rigorous investigation into this after a parliamentary debate last November, but they failed to talk to the family, who have got the documentary evidence. They failed to talk to the guy who, you know, maintains that he did not type a citation for Corporal McLaughlin, and you've got the commanding officer, Lieutenant General Sir Hugh Pike, saying, I typed a citation for him. And if I may, 32 years later, and only last year, did the Ministry of Defence finally accept that a citation for Stewart was never processed. All the time, they'd led us to believe that a failed citation was never kept.
Grant, what do you think about the way this has been handled?
Well, it is absolutely disgraceful, and it's a travesty in terms of what Stewart did on the night, that he's ended up with no recognition whatsoever. In terms of 3 para, when the awards were made later in the year, September, October 1982, it was almost without question that Stewart McLaughlin was going to get an award of a high value. The fact that he didn't was a complete shock to us all, and we were mystified. Now, people have asked since, why weren't things said at the time? As serving soldiers, we weren't in a position to do so, and that was for the officers of the battalion to take up that argument. But you mentioned a minute ago that the government talked about the integrity of the system and that making a retrospective award now would undermine the value of others made. That is absolute nonsense. If they want to have integrity in their system, then they need a system that actually recognises where it's gone wrong and puts those correct. Last year, the same system managed to rescind 2 military crosses from Afghanistan because they found evidence where those crosses should not have been awarded. If they can find errors and rescind awards that they've given, surely the opposite logic should apply.
Mark, you've got so much support in this campaign. We mentioned that 1,000 servicemen will be marching on Downing Street later on today. Even if the medal were awarded now, could anything make you prouder of your brother?
A simple answer to that is no, but I'll just go back to the people that are marching today are the complete line of command. From Stewart's platoon sergeant through to the company sergeant major, the regimental sergeant major, the commanding officer at the time. And I've got a letter to read out to the guys who have gathered there today from Major General Julian Thompson, who was the brigadier during that time. And he wholeheartedly supports this campaign. We have got every military commander from bottom to top, short of the guys that have passed away since, Major General Jeremy Moore, to name one, who support it. These are the guys that were there, they were on the ground, and they all support the campaign.
Mark.
Stewart is a unique case.
Well, hundreds of members of the Parachute Regiment are gathering here in Whitehall for the 2nd year running for a march to get what they see as a massive injustice overturned, namely one of their own who died during the Falklands conflict. A citation was written citing his extreme bravery. But unfortunately that went missing and the award, most likely a Victoria Cross, was never issued. Let's chat now with John Weeks, who was Company Sergeant Major at the time, John. Tell me a little bit about Stewart, your colleague.
Right, I had the company for 2 years before we went to the Falklands, so obviously I knew all my boys and all my NCOs. And Stewart was a very strong-minded soldier, and I mean strong-minded. He was a professional soldier, simple as that, and he believed that he was untakeable, for want of a better word. But he was really.
Sadly, he lost his life in a very brave action.
Yes, he did. He was taking out bunkers, and sadly he got zapped. Everybody at the time said how brave he was. We all spoke about it on the way back, and obviously since we've been back, we've been campaigning for this. Last year we had the parade. This year I think it's going to be a bit bigger. We've got a band just to push it across, and a number of us are going in, 4 of us, General Pike, myself, Colonel Patton, who was the 2IC, and the RSM there, who was the RSM of the battalion when we were out there, Laurie. And we're going into the House of Parliament after the march to see the Parliamentary Committee.
In terms of what happened, the citation was written by the CO, who's now Lieutenant General Pike.
Yeah.
That got lost, and that's the reason why the award was never made.
Correct.
What's your message now to the decision makers about this?
Well, does it matter? We all know that there was a citation, so why don't we just do another? I know that General Pike has done another citation, so why don't we just do it now, belated, entry that he gets an award that he so justly deserves. And it's as simple as that.
John, thanks very much indeed for talking to us. Very kind of you. A very clear message from John, echoed across all of his comrades at the time and the supporters who are here today. They want this award for their friend and colleague who was killed in the Falklands, Lance Corporal Stewart McLaughlin, and they want it to come even after all of these years. Tim Cooper, Forces News, Whitehall.
A march to recognise the bravery of a fallen comrade. Around 1,000 paratroopers paraded in London this afternoon. Their aim for Corporal Stewart McLaughlin to receive a posthumous gallantry medal for his part in the Battle of Mount Longdon, one of the fiercest engagements of the Falklands War.
Corporal McLaughlin took control of the whole group that was on the left side of the mountain and not only kept the guys together and kept them moving forward, but actually then coordinated attack after attack, and many of those he led personally. I probably would not have made it off the mountain that night, and along with all the members on my section, we owe our lives to Corporal McLaughlin.
The reason for the campaign is that the original citation recommending Corporal McLaughlin for a medal was lost, and despite it being rewritten by his commanding officer, a Ministry of Defence inquiry rejected the request. In a statement they said the investigation noted the courage displayed by Corporal McLaughlin, but found no contemporaneous evidence that he was treated differently from other servicemen who were considered for an award. But those at today's parade believe that decision simply doesn't make sense.
If you take Ian Mackay, was one of my platoon sergeants who died out there and got the VC, Stewart was working alongside him and they were both attacking the bunker, so, you know, why should one get it and not the other?
And today, Corporal McLaughlin's son handed a 14,000 name petition into Downing Street to try and get a new inquiry.
We just delivered a letter now to ask them to look into the evidence that we've got and wait to see if they come back to us.
Corporal McLaughlin's old comrades say they'll now keep up their campaign for as long as it takes to get recognition for his bravery. Tim Scott, ITV News.
Stewart was my section commander during the Battle for Mount Longdon, so I fought the battle alongside him and witnessed first-hand his actions. What I witnessed throughout that battle was incredible courage, extraordinary heroism and calm, controlled leadership. The reason I'm part of the campaign and always have been for many years is because I feel very strongly, and I've got no doubt in my mind really, that I probably would not have made it off the mountain that night. And along with all the members on my section, we owe our lives to Corporal McLaughlin.
It's astonishing that the British government have accepted that there has been an injustice in this case, and that's in Hansard, Anna Soubry, and that what Corporal McLaughlin did on the Falklands was remarkable, said in the House of Commons last year. We were then promised a rigorous investigation, which did not speak to Lieutenant General Sir Hugh Pike, who wrote the original citation and has since rewritten it. They did not speak to the guy who declared, and many times, and it's documented, I did not type a citation for Corporal Stewart McLaughlin. And only last year, after 32 years, did the Ministry of Defence finally concede that they never processed a citation for Corporal Stewart McLaughlin. It was lost. It was lost in a grubby little house in Port Stanley. Our feelings are running high. We're letting the government know this isn't going away. It's Para Edge. It's airborne. We don't go away.
Can you just tell me why you're all gathered here today?
Well, we're gathered here today to try and get a recognition for my dad, Corporal Stewart McLaughlin, who was killed in the Falklands in 1982. A number of the officers were killed. Sergeant Ian Mackay was killed, who later received a Victoria Cross. And my dad basically took over his company and pretty much ran the battle that side of the mountain. One of his actions was he total disregard for his own safety to move his men from a position where they were pretty much imminently going to get killed. He charged a machine gun position, declaring that he was bulletproof, and he took out that position with his men.
Was he hit late in the battle?
Yeah, basically the battle had finished, and he was getting out of Sanga, like a fortified bunker, if you like. He was preparing his weapons and kit for an attack on Stanley the next day. As he got out, and a private in his section was shuffling out the Sanga, it was an artillery round coming, or a mortar round, and basically wounded him in the back. He still wouldn't be stretchered down to the aid post. He insisted on walking down, but unfortunately a further artillery round come in and killed him and another soldier with him. Basically his heroic activities that night should have led to a gallantry award, but it turned out his citation was lost. Hence we are here now to try and push that forward and get it rectified.
Well, I'm here first and foremost because I fought on Mount Longdon in Corporal McLaughlin's section. I witnessed firsthand and at very close quarters the extraordinary courage and bravery that he demonstrated that night on numerous occasions. And I've absolutely no doubt that myself and members of that section would not probably have made it off Mount Longdon without his actions. So I'm here to make sure that I add my voice to all the voices that are calling for what is right, and that Corporal McLaughlin receives the recognition that has been denied for so long.
At the one point where we were pinned down by the unexpected machine gun fire, we all sort of took cover, and there was a little bit of a lull, and then we knew we were in a lot of trouble. And that's when Stewart stood up and says, well, follow me, you know, I'm effing invincible, I'm bulletproof, let's go. And crossed the gap, found a bit better cover, and could reorganise from there. His bravery was outstanding at the time, his leadership was outstanding, you know, and he's thoroughly deserved to get some sort of award and formal recognition of his actions on the day.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember.
Also tonight, up to 1,000 paratroopers march on Downing Street, demanding a posthumous medal for a soldier killed during the Falklands War. Up to 1,000 paratroopers and Royal Marines have marched on Downing Street, petitioning the Prime Minister to honour a soldier who was killed during the Falklands War. Commanding officers recommended a gallantry medal for Corporal Stewart McLaughlin, but that citation was lost and an appeal turned down. Tim Cooper has more.
Corporal Stewart McLaughlin was killed shortly after the Battle of Mount Longdon in June 1982. Many of these men served with him that day and can't understand why his bravery, helping save others despite terrible injuries, hasn't been officially recognised. Lieutenant General Sir Hugh Pike was commanding officer that day and wrote a citation detailing McLaughlin's brave, gallant actions. But it was lost in the chaos of post-occupation Stanley, so he's never been officially recognised. These paras want that to change and are preparing to march to Downing Street with a petition. Grant Grinham was injured alongside Corporal McLaughlin that day and is attending with his daughter Holly.
It's a travesty that he's not been recognised, and we will not cease until we get the recognition for him. And so it's important for me to be here. I fought with Corporal McLaughlin on Mount Longdon. There are other guys here also that fought with him. In fact, we've got the full section from Mount Longdon as well as the hierarchy of 3 para.
The government's already held an investigation into what happened, but family, friends and comrades say they weren't even contacted to contribute.
More determined than ever to explain to the government your rigorous, so-called rigorous investigation wasn't that. It was a non-investigation. They didn't speak with Lieutenant General Hugh Pike, who wrote the citation in '82, and then rewrote a citation some years ago.
The centre of London was brought to a standstill as the paras made their point. Then the petition, carried by Stewart's son, also Stewart, was brought to Downing Street. 5 comrades from 1982, from CO to Sergeant, accompanying.
Yeah, they need to basically get it right this time and look into it. The evidence is there in black and white, they just need to address it.
How hopeful are you?
I'm hopeful because I know what he done that night and everyone is aware of what he done. It's just, I don't know what's holding them up so much.
This is the 2nd year these men have marched. They say they'll be back for a 3rd time if nothing is done, to recognise the bravery of one of their own. Tim Cooper, Forces News, Whitehall.
Thank you.